Aloha and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be covering Module 12, which is installing Windows. Particularly, we're going to be talking about Windows 10 and Windows 11. So this is Part 2, CompTIA A Plus Core 2, 220-1102. So module objectives. By the end of this module, we're going to be able to evaluate a system to determine if it qualifies for Windows 10 or Windows 11. We're going to understand how Windows supports networking and resources on network. We're going to go over planning for a Windows installation. We're going to do the installation of Windows. We're going to talk about configuring Windows settings, the hardware, users, and applications after the installation. And we're going to go over special concerns when installing Windows in a large enterprise. So evaluating a system for Windows 10 or Windows 11, there's situations where you're going to need to install Windows, and that includes when you have a new hard drive. You may want to increase, capacity, so you're wanting to move everything onto a larger hard drive. That's one case. Your Windows version may become corrupted, so you're going to need to reinstall Windows at that point. Also, if you're upgrading from one operating system to another, and before Windows 11, this was something that you could often do. You could go from one version to the next without much worry about hardware. That's a little bit different now, and we'll talk about that later. So many decisions need to be made before the installation, such as which edition you're going to be using and which version. So if you're choosing Windows 10, Windows or Microsoft offers a variety of versions here, or editions. You've got Windows 10 Home Edition, that's intended for laptops and desktop computers in a home environment. You've got Windows 10 Pro, which adds features designed to work in a corporate settings. You've got Windows 10 Pro for workstations, and that adds improvement. It improves your performance. And then you've got Windows 10 Enterprise, which allows for volume licensing and additional security features. For Windows 11, it comes with the same additions as the Windows 10, but it's got significant differences between the Home and Pro version. So the Windows 11 Pro offers features that you're not going to find in Home, particularly BitLocker, Hyper-V, which is for virtual machines, your Microsoft Remote Desktop, MDM group policy, capacity for more RAM, and support for joining Active Directory and Azure AD. So if you need to use any of that, you're going to need Windows 11 Pro. Then we've got Windows 11 Home. It requires an internet connection, and a Microsoft account is required for installation. This is something I particularly don't like. It used to be that you could create local accounts. Now you're going to need that internet connection so that you can get a Microsoft account for your installation. And yeah, that's a requirement that I do not agree with, do not like, but it is what it is. 32-bit versus 64-bit version. This is something to pay attention to. A 64-bit installation generally performs better than 32-bit installations. They're faster. It can support more RAM. It says here it can also support 64-bit applications, which run faster. That's true. 64-bit installations of Windows require 64-bit device drivers. That's something to keep in mind. And you also must have enough RAM to support a 64-bit installation. It does use a little bit more, but it also can address a heck of a lot more memory too. So that's a good point. So verifying that your system qualifies for Windows 10, you need to, before you actually buy Windows 10, verify that all the applications will work with Windows 10. Some things, may not have made the jump. So make sure it's compatible. You also need to make sure that your computer meets the minimum hardware requirements. Microsoft has a list of those, but in general, your CPU has to be 1 gigahertz or faster. I don't know any systems that don't have that type of capabilities. RAM, you've got to have 1 gigabyte for a 32-bit operating system, or 2 gigabytes for the 64-bit version. Then the free space on the hard drive, 16 gigabits for a 32-bit installation, or 20 gigabits for a 64-bit OS. Graphics card, DirectX 9 or later with WDDM 1.0 driver, and your display is going to need to be 800 by 600 resolution. So yeah, so you can use system information window, the msinfo32.exe, to get details about the hardware and software. So one thing to keep in mind here is that when you're looking at these specs, you're probably thinking, wow, just about any computer I've ever seen has this kind of specs. I think that you'll find that if you're trying to get these onto little tiny, mini PCs or micro PCs, you might start to hit some of the limitations here, especially if you're looking, like a Chromebook type system. You are going to come across that they'll need to have at least 20 gigabytes for the 64-bit version. So these could be a little bit challenging, I guess, on a very small factor PC, but yeah, in general, you're not going to have trouble with these. The requirements for a computer to qualify for Windows 11 are the same as for Home and Pro editions. You've got to have a processor with 2 cores and a minimum speed of 1 gigahertz. Memory, it's going to have at least 4 gigs of RAM. It's going to need 64 gigs of storage. And for security's sake, the UEFI firmware with Secure Boot enabled and a version of the 2.0 TPM chip on the motherboard. And that's usually what I mentioned earlier, the difficult thing that makes a lot of people needing to buy new hardware to put Windows 11 on, because unless you got something really recent, you may run into trouble with that one specification right there. And then for upgrade paths, currently you can upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11 for free. That's a nice positive thing. So understanding how Windows supports networking. So Windows computers can connect to a local network and a work group or a domain. Computers connected anywhere on the internet can share resources by using Microsoft Azure cloud services. And then for a Windows workgroup, a network that doesn't have centralized control, like in a domain or something, it's called a peer-to-peer network, P2P network. And Windows calls this a work group and has for the longest time. So a work group is a logical group of computers and users that share resources. So administration resources and security on a workstation are controlled it's controlled by that workstation. So when you're setting up connections for people on other systems, you're going to have to specify that for each and every one. So Windows domains are a little bit different. So Windows domain is implemented on a larger private network, and a domain forms a logical group of network computers that share a centralized directory database of user account information security. And a Windows domain is a type of client server network. And often you find at the base is Active Directory. Active Directory is on a Windows server, and it controls network using the directory database called the Active Directory AD. All users must have their own domain level accounts called a domain user account or a network ID. And here is a screenshot of something with the, when you're going to set everything up, you're going to be looking in there to join. You can set up as your work or school account, what Microsoft calls the bring your own device experience. And then you've got the alternative actions down below it, which you can join the Azure AD or you can join the domain. So if you're in an enterprise, you would be joining the domain, and you can. So for a domain-based thing, like if you're in an enterprise, if you're in a big company, they're going to be controlling the resources centrally. So you're going to either use the Azure version of it, the cloud-based version, or you're going to be doing it using a local Windows server, and that's going to be the domain join down below. So with Azure Active Directory, the Azure Active Directory, Azure AD or AAD, manages users in the cloud and creates a virtual network of users connected through the internet. Azure AD runs in the cloud, as I mentioned before, for more than 200 Microsoft data centers around the world. Microsoft calls joining a personal device to Azure AD as BYOD, the bring your own device experience. And that's common in companies where people are allowed to bring in tablets and phones and things like that, and maybe their own laptops. So to authenticate to Azure AD, make sure you're connected to the internet. That's going to be necessary since it's cloud-based. You need to open up the Settings app, go into the Accounts group, and then click on Access Work or School. Then under Access Work or School, you can click Connect, and then click on Join this device to Azure Active Directory. And it would be nice if they had graphics for that, but alas, they do not. So for the types of user accounts that can be used here, the following are the 3 types. You've got a local account that's created on a local computer, and it's recognized only by the local computer. It's not going to be recognized on any other systems in the network. Then you've got the network ID and password are created and maintained on a Windows domain and Active Directory. So that's the domain model that we talked about, where you're going to have somebody, an administrator, set up your credentials, your network ID and password, essentially. Then you also have a Microsoft account. You can use the email address initially set up at the Microsoft website that gives you access to Microsoft OneDrive Cloud. So any of the above types can be assigned a privilege level for standard or admin account. And our final checklist here before beginning the installation. You need to verify all application software, DVDs, and device drivers are available. And the reason for this is after you have installed the new operating system, you need to have, you're going to have to reinstall your software unless you're doing an upgrade. But you're also going to need your device drivers, because the device drivers, this is also something to think about. Yeah, you may need new device drivers for the new operating system. So you need to back up all your important data. This is something you should already be doing. I did notice that a lot of people in homework had commented that they don't back up data on a regular basis. This is where you want to be doing that, just in case the thing, in case something goes wrong in the middle of it. So if you're not reformatting the drive, run antivirus software to ensure the drive is free from malware. This is something I've never really done because I run antivirus software at regular intervals, usually nightly, and I don't really worry about it happening between the time I run it at night and the time that I actually install the software during the day. But this is on here anyway. So use the BIOS UEFI setup to verify the boot sequence that's needed for the installation. If you're going to go off of a USB drive, something like that, you're going to need to make sure that that has higher priority in the boot process. In the BIOS UEFI setups, disable any virus protection setting that might prevent the boot area of the drive from being altered. That's going to be a problem. Also, you've got to set the BIOS UEFI to use UEFI mode or the UEFI CSM, the compatibility mode, essentially. Set that. And then for laptops, use the AC adapter so you don't run out of battery. That's a very important thing. You don't want to get halfway through and have it go down. So typically you'll purchase the Windows 10 or 11 online. The product key will be emailed to the Microsoft account used to make the purchase. If you purchased a USB flash drive, look for the product key printed on the cover of the flash drive case, on a card inside the case, or affixed to the back of the Windows documentation booklet. So the product key might not be required to reinstall Windows. That's kind of iffy. So, if you have it, do keep it, always, keep a copy of it, take a picture of it on your phone, whatever you need to do to keep a copy of that, but it may not be required if you have to reinstall Windows. For a laptop, on one or other brand name computer, the computer manufacturer might have stored the Windows product key on the motherboard firmware. So in that case, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But if you think about that, that also is going to limit your ability to move the installation. You'll find out in a minute that we're not going to be able to do that. So here's some useful information about an ISO file. An ISO file is an image of an optical disk, including its file system and all its files and folders. It's also called an ISO image or a disk image. To see the contents of it, you can open Explorer, right-click on it, and click Mount, and then it's going to assign a drive letter. You're going to be able to peruse the contents of that ISO file. And that's kind of neat to do. If you have an optical drive that can write to DVDs, you can also burn this from an ISO. You can burn a DVD from an ISO file if you want to install from a DVD instead of an ISO. You can also mount an ISO file to a virtual DVD in a virtual machine, use it to install Windows in the VM itself. And that's a real useful thing to do. I've done that quite a lot with using VMware. So here is a picture of running Windows Update to go ahead and you can see Update to Windows 11 is ready and it's free. That's great. Windows 10 was a free upgrade from 8.1. 11 is a free upgrade from Windows 10. And it's nice that they're going through that, but they make it really easy to update internally. You can just go ahead to Windows Update and inside your settings screen. So that's a nice way to do it. It can be a little bit, you can get pop-up messages that become a little bit annoying at times, but it's nice to know it's there and it's free. So we're going to do a knowledge check here. So we've got a 32-bit Windows 8.1 installed on our computer. We purchase a license for Windows 10 Pro. Yay. You want to install Windows 10 using the 64-bit architecture. Hold on, we've already got 32-bit, right? And we're going to go to a 64-bit architecture. That's got us wondering here. In which ways can we install Windows 10? Well, you can perform an upgrade, but not a clean install. That would make sense because upgrading a 32 to a 64-bit thing, your device drivers are going to not work, so that we definitely will have issues here. So let's look at B. You can perform an upgrade or a clean install. Again, upgrade, not going to work so well. Clean install, that sounds a little bit better than C. You can perform a clean install, but not an upgrade. I say C is the right answer. And then D, none of the answers above are correct. And that's not true. You can install clean, you can do a clean install going from one to the other. But really the question is, why would you have had a 32-bit Windows installation if you could handle 64-bit, with your hardware? Yeah, maybe you're supporting legacy things. Maybe that's your reason. But yeah, you can do a clean install. And let's see our answer. Ta-da! Yep, there we go. Answer C. You can perform a clean install, but not an upgrade. You can upgrade a 32 to a 64-bit. In that situation, you must perform a clean install. So Windows 10 in-place upgrade. So steps to upgrade to Windows 10 include the following. You need to sign in to Windows using an admin account because admin's going to need the advanced privileges there. So before you start the upgrade, you need to do the following. You need to scan the system for malware. Again, I mentioned my opinions on this earlier. I stick by them. You need to uninstall any applications or device drivers you don't intend to use in the new installation. That's a good point. If you're not going to be, using an application or using certain pieces of hardware, why bring it forward? You're just going to be, junking up your new system. So go ahead and uninstall that. And you also need to make sure your backups are up to date. That's very important because if everything goes south, you're going to need to be able to restore from that. Insert the Windows 10 setup DVD or flash drive, or mount the setup ISO file. Yeah, DVDs, I guess, are still a thing these days, although I haven't seen a drive for quite a while on a new system, but sure, why not? Open the File Explorer and double-click setup.exe, and that should start the process. You'll be asked to enter the product key, or you can click on I don't have a product key. Then you go and accept the licensing terms. Then you wait for the downloads or the updates to download. Then you're going to verify keep personal files and apps as selected because you don't want to wipe everything out. Then on the choose what to keep screen, you're going to decide what you want to do with the Windows settings. Then you're going to get the ready to install window. You're going to verify the choices that you've got listed, and then you're just going to hit install. Then during the installation, setup may restart several times. And after making the choices on the privacy settings screen, the Windows 10 desktop appears. So yeah, this can be a long process. So if you're going to do a clean install, it's a little bit different from the upgrade. If you've got a Windows 8.1 7 installation that qualifies for a Windows 10 upgrade, and you need to do a clean install, you should do the following. You're going to start the installation from the Windows desktop. Follow the previous steps for an in-place upgrade. And when you get to the ready to install window, click change what to keep. And from the change what to keep window, you're going to say nothing, and then you're going to click next. And that will pretty much blast it. So for the Windows 10 clean install, use the following steps to perform a clean install on a newly installed hard drive, on a new computer you're building, or on a computer that has a corrupted Windows installation. So you can boot from Windows Setup DVD or USB flash drive and choose Install Now. Then when you get to which type of installation, click on Custom Install Windows Only. On the Where do you want to install Windows screen, select the drive and the volume that you want to install Windows on. Then after it begins, you may have to restart it several times, just like in the upgrade for methodology. Then you're going to choose your region and your keyboard layout. So point number 5, On the how would you like or how would you like to set up screen, you can choose to set up the computer on a school or business network and have limited control. For what we're going to do, well, we're not really running through a demo here, but you'd set up for personal use and go to the next screen. Then it's going to say, let's add your account. You can choose an existing Microsoft account. You can create a new one, or you can create an offline account. And that's what I mentioned earlier. I like that ability to just create an offline account, so you're not really going back to the mothership to Microsoft to do stuff. I like to be able to, just work offline in that sense. And sometimes you don't have an internet connection when you're first setting these things up, so it's a bit of a pain. And then the rest of the steps involve setting up a local account or connecting to a network. And then pretty much upgrading to Windows 11 or performing a clean install works the same as it would for Windows 10. So here is when we have a bootloader menu and a dual boot environment, you can see that you can have either Windows 10 or 8.1 on there. So that's a nice little feature if you want to keep different versions. Now for installing in a virtual machine, this is a little bit more fun. Virtual machines are great. They allow you to run different systems on a computer. I used to use VMware to do different things. I'd use VMware, but I also used VirtualBox a bit too. And if you're going to use the two, it's actually I used Hyper-V more than VMware. So I used Hyper-V and VirtualBox. But if you're ever going to want to convert one to the other, it's a bit of a pain. So I'd choose the one you want to use in advance and choose wisely. But it gives you the ability to make a system, and you can just spin up a system, run some things that you need to do. It's nice. It's safe. It's all sandboxed. And I used to do development, so I would do Japanese development. So I needed a Japanese Windows 2019 server. So I'd have that, and I'd have my entire programming environment set up in there, and it was wonderful. You can just do everything that you would do on the regular hardware. The only thing is this does kind of take up a lot of your resources, so your memory and a little bit of disk space. But anyway, back to the points here. A virtual computer or virtual machine is software that simulates the hardware on a physical computer. You can install and run multiple OSs at the same time on a single computer called the host machine. So yeah, you've got guest and host. So host is the machine that's running everything. And then your guest systems are the VM or the virtual machines that you're using. So software used to manage VMs installed on a workstation is called a hypervisor. And the popular hypervisors for Windows are the client Hyper-V by Microsoft, VirtualBox by Oracle, and VMware Workstation Player by VMware. And those are the top, the three most popular ones with the best market share. VMs require a lot of memory and might slow down your system. And this is particularly true if you're going to spin up a couple of them. So one thing to keep in mind when you're using these, some people forget, but you can turn them off when you're not using them. So if you have them for particular uses, like when you're developing or you're trying to, just different projects you may have, turn them off when you're not using them. Then you can release a lot of your system resources, and they can gobble up a lot of CPU and memory. So install Windows in the client Hyper-V VM. So the client Hyper-V is a part of the 64-bit Windows 10 11 Pro. Your processor and your motherboard must support hardware-assisted virtualization. Generation 1 VMs allow either 32-bit or 64-bit installation of an OS in a VM. Generation 2 requires a 64-bit operating system, so keep that in mind. That's a very important distinction between the two. Hyper-V can connect a VM to the local network, which is very good. Client Hyper-V supports dynamically expanding virtual hard drives and dynamically allocating memory, which is nice because you're not tied into what you set it up with originally. So let's say you've got a lot of files in there and you're using a lot more space. You can just dynamically size that up as you need to. You're not stuck to the original installation, essentially. And this is an example of different types of boxes running here. So you've got like an Ubuntu desktop running, also got a Windows 10 desktop running here. So you can have all these systems within your system. And it's just like having a totally different system there that's sandboxed. You're not going to have to worry about you're theoretically not going to have to worry about leaks between the two, but if you ever follow like DEF CON, things like that, there have been instances where they've been able to escape the box, as they call it, so they can somehow get back up to the host level from the guest level. So anyway, this is what it looks like to be using virtual machines. You have Windows within Windows, essentially. So solving problems with installations. Here's what you do when you install an older license of Windows 10, 11 on a new hard drive. So during setup, you click, I don't have a product key, and Windows should activate. This, I don't think is actually, I recently did I think a Windows 10 installation, and I think that they'd remove that option, but maybe it's been added in again. I'm not sure, but this may not be 100% correct there. But it used to be that you could say, I don't have a product key, and it would activate, but you would have a little message come up down the bottom. So yeah, that could be a problem. So hold on, wait. But actually, here's what to do when you install an older license on a new hard drive. Yeah, so it may be getting it from the motherboard as well if it's got the information there. So yeah. So anyway, if you move a Windows retail license to a new computer, enter the product key that you purchased from the Microsoft Online Store. You can't move a Windows 10, 11 OEM license from one computer to another. They're tied to hardware. So yeah, you're not going to be able to do that. That's a pain because, you know, what happens if you lose a motherboard? What happens if you lose something and you're going to have to, you know, upgrade? You know, that's a bit of a pain. So if you have a Windows 10, 11 free upgrade license from a previous retail license of Windows 8.1 or 7, you can move that to a new computer. So that's nice. Yeah, there are limitations there. So what to do after a Windows installation? So after you've got it installed, you're going to have to verify that you have network access. That's the first thing to do. And I think we're going to have a question asking about that in just a minute. But you also need to install Windows updates and verify the update settings. And this can be a long process involving a lot of reboots as you go. Then you need to verify your anti-malware settings. You need to install your hardware. You need to set up user accounts and transfer or restore user data and preferences from backups to the new system. And lastly, you need to install the applications. So here is something you can do to verify network access. You can go into your network connections, do a right click on Ethernet, go down to properties, pull up your properties, and then you can look at the, you can click on your TCP/IP section there. If you're using IPv4, you can look in there and see if it's automatically setting your stuff. So in this one, they're using DHCP. So you know that you're you should be able to get that. I'd always pull up a command prompt and use something like ipconfig/all, something like that. Then, oh yes, the place you're going to spend a lot of time, Windows Update, because after you install, you're going to have to go through here and you're going to have to, click on the, look for updates, and then you're going to have to, install the ones they have available, then restart, and then go through the whole process again, restart, and yeah, over and over until it just doesn't find anything anymore. And God knows how many attempts that'll take. Usually it's quite a few. And then you can use the Settings app to manage your Windows 10 updates. You can see all the updates, the history that you've got in there. So that's nice to have, just in case you're wondering if you got the latest, greatest updates. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you've got your Windows Defender running before you go about connecting to the real world. So yeah, make sure you've got that running. Then lastly, or not lastly, we're going to be installing hardware. And so for devices that weren't automatically installed during the installation, they've got to be installed at this point. So after you install each device, reboot and verify operation before moving on to the next one. So you may need to install drivers for the motherboard, install drivers that came for the video cards so you can get all the features that the card offers. You need to install your printers, and for other hardware devices, you need to read and follow the manufacturer directions for installation. That's very important, actually, because a lot of them have a lot of them don't want you to plug in the device they'll want you to install the software first, and then put in the hardware. But just follow their instructions and their directions on how to do that. Then this is one place where you will learn to live the device manager. Whenever you have something that's not working as you expect it, go into your device manager, look for those exclamation marks to see what is conflicting with other things. You can right click on it, go to properties, and see a lot of things. So you can also go to right click on it, and then go to uninstall device. You can disable it, you can update a driver, you can do a lot of different things. So yeah, device manager, you'll spend, as a system administrator, you'll spend a lot of time there. And then here is an example of associating a local account with a Microsoft account. You go in there to your information and you can just click on sign in with the Microsoft account instead. That's going to link your account to a Microsoft account. So user account control dialog boxes. The purpose of the UAC dialog box, it includes the following. It helps to prevent malicious background tasks from gaining administrative privileges when the administrator is signed in. So to make it easier for an administrator to sign in using a less powerful user account for normal desktop activities, still be able to perform administrative tasks when signed in as a regular user. It's important to remember that when you have admin rights, you have a lot of power there. You have a lot of power to screw things up. And there's two different types of damage that can be done here. One is malicious damage. If somebody is able to escalate privileges and get an admin account, they can do a lot of damage. But the other side is an administrator that accidentally performs actions that are detrimental to the system. So it's important that administrators always sign in with a less powerful user account to do their normal stuff, and then escalate when they need to. So yeah, that's a very important point. You can control how the UAC works. In control panels, go to user accounts, then click on change user account control settings. So lastly, we get to installing applications. So before installing an application, you should consider the compatibility with the OS. Some things aren't, you'll find that some of the applications you have just aren't supported any longer in newer operating systems. You need to make sure that it's okay with the hardware requirements. You also have to measure the impact to network performance, impact to the device, impact to operations, and impact to business. These are, of course, if you're using these in business, enterprises. So here we've got, you can do a lot in the uninstall or change program area. You can go in, click on it. You can get a lot of information from here too. The publisher, getting the publisher information, you can see when you've installed it, how big it is, what version you're running, and everything else. You can also install, you can do a right click on it. You can do uninstalls and whatnot. So this is a very useful place to go for information. So methods to deploy a standard image. So standard image contains the entire Windows volume in a single Windows imaging file, a WIM file. Installing Windows on a computer via a standard image is called image deployment. A standard image is hardware independent. A standard image is created in a process called drive imaging. And deploying a standard image always results in a clean install rather than an upgrade. You can't do an upgrade this way. And I personally had experience with this going way back to Windows 95. I was working in a Japanese company and we were doing a massive installation for probably about 150 systems throughout our company. And we were doing drive imaging to do that. So we were going to take a lot of computers. We were doing them in batches of maybe 20 at a time. And we just go through and we'd do the image deployment. And somebody had set up a configuration file so that it would grab all the configuration information out of there and set up each system automatically for us. It was quite wonderful to do. That was back in the days of Windows 95. All these systems were Japanese too, so that was quite a lot of fun getting through that. But yeah, it's the tools have gotten a lot better over time. So some of the things that we had trouble with back then are no longer issues. So yeah, lucky to be coming into IT in these times. So image deployment can be started using one of the following methods. You can do a local installation where you've got a bootable flash or DVD that contains the image. and it will run the Windows pre-installation environment, the Windows PE. You can do a network installation, which is boot to the network and deploy the image from a server. So you have a server that's actually doing the sending the image to it. Then you can do a push automation. This is where a technician doesn't have to start the actual image deployment. The entire remote network installation is automated, and you don't have to do any intervention with it. So an unattended installation, use an answer file. I mentioned earlier, I called it a configuration file, but use an answer file for where the responses are restored. Because as you go through the installation, you get all these questions that come up. So these answer files have all the pre-programmed answers to those. So there's the USMT software as well, the user state migration tool. It can be used when deploying Windows in a Windows domain. I think, large enterprise to copy user files and settings from one computer to another. What you can expect when using it, the commands. So you've got scan state, which copies the user settings and files from the source computer to a safe location. Then you're going to do a load state, which is going to apply those settings, and files to the destination computer. Then you've got the USMT utils, which provides an encryption options and hard drive management for it. So the commands themselves can be kind of lengthy, and because of that, they can be stored in batch files provided by the system administrator. And we have our next knowledge check here. So after Windows installation, what is the easiest way to determine that you have internet access? Open the network in Sharing Center and verify that the Wi-Fi is turned on and shows no errors. That can be done, but that may not exactly get us where we want, and it's a lot of steps too. We can open a browser and navigate to a website. I think this is it. This is what I actually do all the time. There are other ways of verifying it that are tedious, but the quickest, in my opinion and experience, is just open up a browser. If you can get to a website, you know a lot of things. You know that you've got an IP address. You got if you're using DHCP, you know that it's got the proper gateway in there. Well, it most likely has the proper gateway. You know your subnet mask is set right. You know that you've got the ability to reach the outer network. And so if you're able to pull down CNN.com, you know your DNS server is working. That tells you a lot about it. So that's what I normally do. You can open up Device Manager and check the network adapter for errors. Sure, that will tell you if it's got errors, but it won't tell you anything else. If you don't have a cable, you can't get to the internet, can you? So then you've got verify that the local router has lights blinking to indicate connectivity. Again, that does tell you if you have connectivity. It doesn't mean necessarily that you're able to get anywhere or do anything that you need to. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of information, but not everything you need. So, when you're doing a test like on the A+ or any of the other exams that they have, it's good to look through and eliminate things, because going through there, and sometimes they're not asking you, not every answer is wrong. When they're asking something subjective, like, what's the easiest way to do something? Look for that shortest path to doing it. And, some of these may be valid answers, but they're not the shortest. It's not the one they're looking for. They're wanting to know the easiest way. And that would be, in my opinion, opening the browser. Now let's go to the next page and find out if I'm wrong. Nope. Open a browser and navigate to a website. So verifying that Wi-Fi works, checking the network adapter for errors, and verifying the router has connectivity will confirm that some parts of the network connection are working, but those steps do not verify you can access the internet. Like I said, if your DNS server isn't working, sure, you can access things like the router and you'll see blinking lights and everything, but you may not be getting to the website that you want to go. It'll time out because it doesn't know the IP address to go to. So summary, now that the lesson has ended, you should be able to evaluate a system to determine whether it qualifies for Windows 10 or Windows 11. Remember, Windows 11 does have that TPM 2.0 requirement that makes it a little bit difficult to upgrade from some of the old Windows 10 hardware that's out there. You should be able to understand how Windows supports networking resources on the network. You should be able to plan for a Windows installation now, and you should be able to install Windows. You should be able to configure Windows settings, hardware, users, and applications after the installation. And you should be able to describe special concerns when installing Windows in a large enterprise. So that concludes Windows installation. It's a bit of a broad overview of it, but I covered a lot of the important things you need to know. This will always change. So, when Windows 12 comes out, what'll that look like? Shouldn't be too far in the future, too. But, you'll find that a lot of these things, apply. You're still going to need to look at your minimum requirements, differences and additions and whatnot. So, yeah. But again, for now, this is what they're looking at, particularly Windows 10, Windows 11. So be knowledgeable about that and you should be good. So I hope you've learned a lot here. If you have any questions, as always, feel to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you. Take care, and I'll talk to you in the next video.